57 years of being married to one man. I tell you what, we didn't really know each other until after we got married.
If I had to think of two artists who are the most involved, the two names that would come to mind would be Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee.
One of the most respected couples in that most unstable industry, show business, have done it all, and without the typical compromises made of some performers of color.
The inordinate power of their talent set a pace for the rest of us.
My films were elevated because of the presence of Ruby Dee and Ossie Davis.
And it's an amazing story. Ossie and Ruby have been at the center of American life for so long and accomplished so much.
They didn't just create and say, I'm an artist, I had nothing to do with that. They dealt with the events of their time.
Both Ruby and Ossie saw their life as much larger than themselves.
People need to get to see them and to know them as we've all known them over the years.
Special live coverage of Remembering Ossie, the funeral for Ossie Davis.
Too quickly, we are losing too many of our legends.
Her poetry, her prose, her life investigates, demands a progressive way of looking at ourselves and the world, demands that we respect our differences, acknowledge our similarities.
She's feisty. You know, of course she is a genteel lady and sophisticated as any, but she brings it right on down to the common denominator.
You, woman, sister, wife, actor, mother, grandmother, activist, professor, poet, philosopher, genius.
If I'm gonna die, I just don't want to die because I'm old. When I die, I want to take some of this. I want to finish some of it.
Ruby Dee, someone who believed and committed and loved more than anything the craft that she did, but didn't separate it from her life. And that's the difference between living and not living.
Muta, first of all, we're so grateful to have the pleasure of showing this film, and we're really hoping that people will get a hold of this, help support you financially, and that's my main purpose. But what was your main purpose as well of doing the movie? You know, you've been asked this many, many times, but for the camera, you know, what was your main purpose of doing this film?
Well, I wanted to capture the exchange that a lot of times we miss. You know, when Grandpa passed away in 2005, I missed the opportunity to deliberately sit down with him and talk about the rich lessons he's learned in life, you know, and sometimes when people pass, so much goes with them, especially with a giant like him. And so I didn't want to repeat that mistake. So the purpose in doing this documentary in this way was to make sure that I sat down with my grandmother while she could, and capture all of the wealth, as much of the wealth of knowledge as she gathered in her life, and capture that exchange. And that exchange alone has inspired people. But we talked in particular about three essentials, in life, and those essentials are love, art, and activism. They had a marriage for over 56 years, Hollywood marriage. They always decided they sacrificed checks to stay committed to socially conscious art. And they were always, since the 50s and before the 50s, involved in activism, local and national activism. And I knew, you know, if people are flying in to speak with my grandmother about their personal lives, and I'm going about my life as if I don't have a gem as a grandmother, I'm being a fool. So I need to sit there and speak with her. That's why we did it.
You know, I saw something happening to you during that movie, though. It was personal, and I think it's so unique that you brought that out. You were asking her questions because you needed answers for things.
Yes.
And how did you go about doing that?
Well, I had to do a deep dive.
What made you do that? I mean, what drove you to that place?
Well, honestly, I had those questions. I had questions of, I started this project, I think I was 31 or 32, and I was having questions about marriage, because that's a time where if you're not married, you might be thinking about it. But as a young man, I'm surrounded by people who, some are married, some aren't, and I see a lot of marriages fall apart, and I don't want to dive into something ill-prepared. So if you have a chance to sit and talk with someone who's had a 56 plus year marriage, you might as well. So, but I had to dive deep to figure out why am I having such trouble with it, and the questions I had about commitment and maybe greed and sex and everything like that. It showed me what really might be fueling my hesitation when it comes to marriage, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a interesting thing to learn about myself, but I got some advice about it through her and through some of Grandpa's recordings. So
that's great.
Taking that deep dive and taking that risk by bringing it up with her paid off, I think.
The movie did something to me. I was during a time where I've been advocating for an ex-slave house here in Southampton.
Okay.
And during the time when I saw you on Here and Now, that was the beginning of why we got this film.
Yeah, that was fun.
And I said, I have to have this, we got to get a hold of this film. And then when I got a hold of the film, I was going through so much during that time. I was, when you're an advocate and you're on the front line, sometimes you get so burnt out. But when I saw that film, it's like I got this burst of energy. I really did, seriously.
That's
because
awesome.
I said, Ruby Dee, she's Miss Advocate, And how much so you're saying you saw all this advocacy, but it wasn't until you did the film, you seemed like you kind of caught you at that point.
Well, the thing is, I didn't see it all. I saw, she's my grandma, and Grand Ruby. So, of course, I'm not ignorant to who she is maybe on a high level. But when it comes deep down to act, I never saw a lot of that footage, like her on the streets yelling the names of the people who got killed. I never seen that until we did this project. And I was like, this is real. And I never saw those FBI files, and I never saw. There's a huge archive that I hadn't explored. I really hadn't. So all of that was new to me, and I was tremendously changed by it. I'm so happy that other people are touched by it too. Tremendously.
Yeah. I think it was kind of a twist too when you brought out about them being on the FBI list.
Oh yeah, you didn't expect that.
No,
though, huh? Yeah, I didn't.
We did not.
Yeah.
We did not.
So.
And that's kind of that's a serious thing.
Yeah, because it shows me not that they were dangerous, but that the FBI must have thought that they were dangerous. But when you see them and know that their intentions are just to help people, then why are people who are helping people on FBI lists? Like, why is that a dangerous thing to do? Shouldn't they spend their time following other people? But it was kind of scary. But
it didn't stop her.
No, because and then Grandpa says in the doc that part of his list, he had the eyes on him because of his close association with Grand Ruby.
Exactly. Because when you were showing it, her name kept coming up. Like she was the target.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Because it was her family who was the connection to Malcolm X also, So
really? How so?
Because her brother Tommy converted to Islam and was at Temple Number 7 with Malcolm X and was a friend. He would drive around with Malcolm to different speaking engagements, etc. And he's the one who made the connections. And he said, "Oh, Ruby, you got to meet this Malcolm. You got to meet Malcolm. You got to meet Malcolm."
Awesome.
And he made the introduction, and they vetted Malcolm because you never know who people are, and they ended up seeing how much of a brilliant soul he was. And so she was deep into helping people.
And I think you brought out too, I think her mom was that way. So I think that has a lot to do with too, when you brought up in that environment, and we say this saying goes, you're part of your environment.
Right.
So it seemed like her mom was...
Right, her mother, and she always, in our interview, she always, no matter what, veered off to something her mother taught her.
Really?
So it is so clear that her mother had a huge impact on who she was. And her mother was very active in Harlem. Her mother was always taking her to rallies. That's why she said she had picket signs before, as soon as she could walk, she had a picket sign. And her mother would take care of the women in the community who were raising children by themselves. So she'd always be babysitting or giving them a place to stay in the corner there, So her mother was involved and cared for a lot of people. So
and what was her mother's name, the full name?
It was Emma Amelia Benson, but then she's a Wallace, so Emma Wallace.
Well, see, that's why I can relate so much, because I still do that.
Yeah.
Single women,
Really?
Yes, that's what I do, besides whatever else I do. But I want to thank you again for coming, and I want you to let people know how they can open up their paychecks, open up their paycheck, not their paycheck, open up their checkbooks and send you something. So if you can get information.
Make a donation, and you can make a tax tax-deductible donation too. Go to rubydstory.com and you'll find all the information you need. rubydstory.com, and you can make a charitable donation, and you can help us make this last little step and be a part of this project. So everyone, we've had a huge Kickstarter following. We got our money, our seed money from there. A lot of celebrities you see, once they saw where we were going with it, they fell in love with it and helped us take the next few steps. And this has been such a community-driven piece on the back end that I think the Grandpa and Grand Ruby will really be happy about it. So definitely go to rubydstory.com and you'll see the donation area. You can find out some more details about it. And I thank you in advance.
Thank you.
Thank you.